G'day, it's Heath here from pickandlessons.com. The Big Sciota is certainly one of my favourite fiddle tunes, and in this guitar lesson we're going to take a look at an arrangement that features some of the low tones on the guitar, some floating technique and some chordal accompaniment supporting our melody as well. So we have two A variations and one B variation in this arrangement. In a moment we're going to take a look at the first A variation here in this lesson, but if you head to pickandlessons.com you will be able to get yourself a copy of the chart that we're working from here for this arrangement. You'll also find the second and third parts of this lesson where we'll break down the other variations. You'll also find a play along and a backing track there, all in the members section. So pickandlessons.com. Okay, let's start out with the first variation of part A. We'll run through it nice and slow, then we'll break it down and have a look at some of the techniques that you want to make sure you're looking at as you're learning this tune. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so there was the first variation of part A. So this variation features really the low tones. We're playing the melody here on the lower notes of the guitar out of the G shape essentially. The second A variation, we move up the neck and we use what we call the floating technique. So we'll worry about that one later, but let's have a look at what's happening here. Initially, we're playing out of this G position and getting some cross-picking out of our G chord, just for that pickup or the potatoes, the little introduction we have before the melody. So these first two measures are basically what we'll play to lead us into the tune without needing to count it in. So these two measures here, potatoes, we have, which will lead us into the beginning of part A. And so to play this one, nice and strong hammer on there, but then the right hand, we're going to keep our picking moving smoothly. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and down, down, up, down, down, up. So following that rhythm structure. The final portion of that, we have those two pickups leading to the melody note in the next measure. Okay, once more. Ready, and... All right, let's move on to part A. We'll look at the first two measures together. So we have, a little bit of a repeat next. We'll worry about that in a second. But what we have here, we're going to start out in our G position. So think G chord, because that's the chord we're working with. And we're going to hammer on to the first finger in that G shape. Picking hand, down, up, up. Strong hammer on there, nice and clear with the fingers so we're not muting any notes. Letting them ring out. The nice thing about this arrangement, and one of the goals with this arrangement, was that we have lots of notes and tones carrying on through, which kind of stands up on its own without accompaniment. Also, if you're being accompanied by a banjo or a bass and not another guitar, it's nice to kind of fill some of that space. So do hold on to those notes. Then as you move through into the second measure, just down the scale. So holding on the first measure, down the scale in the second. So in other words, not holding those notes together. So that's pretty straightforward. The second variation of that in measures 3 and 4 of part A here starts out in the same way. Then we have just a very subtle variation. Bringing in the flat 3, sliding, and second finger there. So you can use your first finger in that slide. So again, pretty straightforward, but really we're focusing on these deep tones of the guitar. Sounds great. Variation 3 to measure 5 and 6. So here, variation, the melody's moving on, and we have this 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 to the D. So again, holding the G shape where you can, all the way through that measure. We have this nice overlapping of those notes inside the G chord. And then we move on to the C position. Again, holding those notes from the C chord. So those two measures, the 5th and 6th measures in part A, really do let those notes carry on and ring through against each other. Really important. That's sort of the nature of this version of the break. Final two measures before we hit the repeat. Just a great bluesy, bluegrassy lick to get us back to the beginning. So we're not so worried about the chords here, we're just adding a little bit of flair. And what we have here is starting on the A note against the D chord there, 2nd fret. Sliding across to the 3rd to the 4th. Open string, running down the scale. Take your first finger there and roll it. And then to close it out, pickup note. So I'm going to just play it once, just so you can hear how we want those notes to overlap. So from part A, once through. Ready, and... So you can hear how the G and the C chords really work well holding those positions as we're playing those melody notes around. And again, that's kind of the feature of that version of the arrangement. So do keep in mind to leave those fingers down, hold those notes. Really keep an eye on the picking hand. It's all marked in the tablature, just following the regular rhythms, down up on eighth notes, down on quarter notes. A little bit of cross picking in there as we move through, just as we're moving through the different strings, but really when you break it down slowly, it's not too complicated. Just work on getting it up to tempo, get to know it from memory, break it down into smaller chunks to practice. Take your time with it. So that's a really nice way of playing it. Again, if you're not having another guitar back you up, kind of gives you that strength of guitar of the lower tones, which is great. In the next part of these lessons, we're going to take a look at a variation on A, which does get us up the neck. And again, we're getting these notes ringing out through as we play the floating technique. So that'll be a really nice way of going about it as well. So head to pickinglessons.com. We'll break down part A, next variation. We'll also break down part B variation as well. You've got the backing tracks and play along tracks there, plus the tablature. pickinglessons.com. See you there.